What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Lolita. This film was first requested to me by Bleach Clorox on my Moonrise Kingdom review that I released on the 22nd of June. I have to give credit to you guys who request movies to be reviewed on this channel. You're a creative bunch with some great usernames and really interesting taste in films. Lolita is definitely interesting to say the least, so thank you Bleach Clorox for bringing this one to my attention because I'd never heard of it before your request. Awesome username by the way. But anyway, let's get into my review of Lolita. Okay, so Lolita is a 1997 drama romance film that takes place in various places throughout the US in the year 1947. The film was directed by Adrian Lyne and is the second movie adaptation of Vladimir Nabokov's novel of the same name. The basic plot of this movie is that Jeremy Irons' character Humbert, yes, he has the same first and last name, is a European professor of French literature who decides to travel to the United States to accept a teaching position in New Hampshire. Upon his move to New Hampshire, Humbert begins looking for a place to live and schedules a tour of a widow's home by the name of Charlotte Hayes. Well, he almost leaves because he doesn't really like the house that much, but he spots her only daughter, a 12-year-old girl by the name of Dolores, also known as Lo or Lolita, and finds her extremely beautiful, so he decides he would like to live in this house so he can be close to her. If you think that's creepy, just wait, it gets much worse. So eventually Humbert and Lo strike up this extremely unusual romance and begin traveling around to different areas together. The rest of the movie is spent chronicling this extremely odd relationship between a 36-year-old man and a 12-year-old girl and what that would actually look like in 1947. Okay, so as you've probably already gathered from my description of the plot, this movie is pretty strange. The thing is that it's actually a really entertaining movie because it's like a disgusting train wreck that you have to keep watching to see how it resolves itself. For those of you that have already seen this movie, I don't know how you felt while watching it, but I felt pretty uncomfortable to say the least. It's definitely an awkward viewing experience that you're not gonna wanna watch with your sweet old grandmother or anything. It's like when you watch Game of Thrones with your mom and a sex scene comes on and it's super awkward, but multiply that awkwardness by like 15. Cause there's some scenes where the two are just like making out or doing something sexual, or scenes where Humbert will just slap Lo in the face, and as a viewer you're like, I really hope the police don't come knocking on my door because they found out I was watching this movie. I can see how this movie would be pretty polarizing, especially in 97, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that might say this movie is just purely obscene and nothing else. While this movie is hard to watch, I still think it's a really good movie because it's full of drama and just feels raw and unfiltered. It doesn't sugarcoat this relationship and how wrong and dysfunctional it is. The two main characters are both extremely flawed, and you're meant to feel uncomfortable as a spectator of this romantic relationship between a man in his late 30s and a girl who's a young teen. It's so wrong on so many levels, and both Humbert and Lolita know that, but they still continue with their relationship anyway. Both the characters are really compelling because they're flawed and damaged in a lot of different ways. The story as a whole was also interesting because you can see that these two have pretty much zero in common with one another. I mean, there's not really many ways a young teenage girl could have much in common with a near 40-year-old man, and that's something that you're shown and reminded of as a viewer constantly. Whether it be Lo's immature antics and overall personality, or Humbert's rash and sometimes violent outbursts, you can see that they can't really relate to one another very consistently. This film highlights a much darker side of humanity, and that's really interesting and vile at the same time. I'll just say this, the love connection at times only goes one way, and I bet you could guess which way that is, but I won't say any more to avoid the risk of spoiling this movie for you. Okay, so the acting in this movie is phenomenal. Jeremy Irons as Humbert is great, and to be honest, I've never seen him in anything else besides Batman v Superman as Alfred, which just came out this year. In Lolita, his character Humbert is very dark and twisted, but also caring and compassionate at the same time. He has some moments where he gets pissed and hits Lolita, or follows his primal instincts and initiates sexual contact with her, but in most cases he is kind and pretty caring with her because he's genuinely in love with her. He'll do pretty much anything to preserve their romantic relationship and keep it a secret from the outside world. He's just a really twisted dude because he doesn't necessarily love Lolita just purely as an individual. He loves girls of that age who he refers to as nymphets. It's also important to note that Humbert narrates this story and thus it's told from his perspective. This is most obvious when you see Lolita constantly dressed in skimpy outfits. In my opinion, this is because he perceives her in this sexual, twisted way, and not that she actually is dressed like that. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments though. Jeremy Irons did an outstanding job, and I have no idea how he was able to pull off such an unusual character in such an interesting way. You hate Humbert, but you can't say he's not interesting as a character. Dominique Swain, who played Lolita, is fantastic in this movie, and I can't say I've ever seen her in anything else. She also had to jump into this very unusual character that's unlike anything I've personally ever seen seen in any movie ever. Her character starts out at the age of 12 and ends up at roughly 17 or so, and she has to undergo some pretty rough times. She just has a really rough life, and eventually she resorts to using her sexuality to get Humbert to buy her things or let her do things she wouldn't normally be allowed to do. She's a very eccentric and odd young girl, and you could probably just chalk that up to being a young girl in the 1940s with very little parental influence and a really rough childhood overall. I mean, at times she's sort of like a 13 to 14-year-old prostitute, so yeah, I'd be screwed up too. I also thought the dialogue in this movie was really well written and felt completely true to the characters. There aren't any scenes that feel unnatural or corny or anything like that. I feel like this movie holds up really well because you can tell it was made in 1997, but it doesn't scream 1997 to the point where you'll be like, I just can't watch this in 2016. It's also shot nicely and creatively, and the dialogue naturally lets the characters shine and show you who they really are inside and out. Two things I didn't like about this movie are that I felt it can get a little repetitive at times with a runtime of around 2 hours and 17 minutes, and the editing was a little weird and jarring in some moments. There's a lot of driving here and there and fighting between the two lovers and then making up and so on, and this happens a lot to the point where you'll eventually just be like, I want to see something a little different. This happens mostly in acts 1 and 2, but it's really a small detraction for me. In terms of the editing, sometimes you'll have characters be like really far away or something and running towards someone, and then it'll cut to another angle and then back to that running character who's like in the same spot they were in the first place. There's also a few instances where characters will have audible dialogue, but it'll cut to a shot of them real quick and their mouths aren't moving. Viewers in 1997 might not have noticed this, but I think in 2016 you probably will. I still believe this movie holds up pretty well, but there are some moments where it doesn't. As for the ending, I enjoyed it because the characters face consequences for their actions, and this comes to a head in the final half hour or so. I won't tell you how, but this doesn't necessarily end well for either of them. Okay, so overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It's really dark and twisted, but it's interesting. I thought it had really interesting characters and a very unique story, great acting from the two lead actors, a strong third act and ending, and an extremely unusual romance story that's full of drama. I also thought that the film could get a tad repetitive at times, and the editing was a little jarring in some moments. I'm gonna give this movie a 9 out of 10 and say that you should definitely give it a watch if you're looking for some good drama and feel you can handle some of the disturbing imagery. So did you guys see Lolita yet? What did you think of it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if not, let me know whether you'd be interested in watching this film or not. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. Thanks again to Bleach Clorox for the request, whose channel link you can find in the description below. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.